Well, again, we're monitoring the situation of the reopening of schools. Basically, we're talking junior high schools, I have to say. Third years are reopening, and it's important that we also have to add that we need to get a lot of information ongoing. And that's why we've deployed our correspondents. But we also do know that the president, in his 13th address to the public, which of course we carried right here on Joy News, did emphasize the efforts that have been made, not only by the Ministry of Education, but in the entire COVID team, government in particular, to have a special focus on making sure that the children get back to the schools in time and continue with the needed academic work. And it's important that we have to put all these into perspective. We did tell you we're going to have an interaction with the Minister for Information. And Oppong Nkrumah is also the Member of Parliament for Ofuanse Ayerebi. Good morning to you, Oppong Nkrumah, and thank you for joining us.
Roland, thank you for having me. Good morning to Mama V and the rest of your team.
You're great. And I know that you and the rest of the members of the team have been working so hard to make sure that the needed attention is given to the schools. But you say that the time is now opportune, and it's based on preparatory work. What sort of work extensively has been done alongside what the president announced in his speech on Sunday evening?
Roland, so first of all, we are doing this in a phased manner. The tertiary institutions, about 234 of them, went to school about 3 weeks ago. That's just for final year students who are going to complete the examination. And then you had the senior high school students, final year students, and the gold track students go back last week. The first part of the work is to monitor how these first two cohorts have fared on campus and how the protective layers that are required to ensure that lives are protected on campus serve its purpose. And I think the feedback, as the president mentioned, despite a few hitches, the feedback has generally been good. Now, we are at a point where the third cohort, which is made up of junior high school students and their teachers and non-teaching staff, numbering about 750,000, now have an opportunity also to go back to school to complete their academic work. And the kind of preparations you need to do for that are to ensure that, for example, when it comes to the Veronica buckets, soap, availability of water, when it comes to, most importantly, the wearing of the reusable face masks, there are enough of them out there to assist these students and teachers and non-teaching staff to protect themselves. The deployment exercise has already commenced. It's been led by a committee chaired by the Honorable Senior Minister. The Ghana Armed Forces is playing a key role in moving the logistics. And it's our expectation that as the students arrive in school from this morning, they will be given these masks. And that throughout this week, the orientation for teaching and non-teaching staff and the students also will take place so that we don't have any untoward incidents or unfortunate incidents on campus. That's a big objective that we are working on. We acknowledge that early days often come with a bit of difficulty, but these are not ordinary times, so we'll have to do our best to live up to it.
How are we relating what we're recording nationally based on the national figures for coronavirus with what the expectations on the preventive side is in relation to the reopening for these students?
Well, so when it comes to the reopening of the schools, as I mentioned, the key thing you want to do is to put in place a strong preventive mechanism and a strong screening mechanism, so that should you find any isolated incident, you can contain it there as quickly as possible. In terms of the general numbers of COVID-19 cases that are being recorded, or what we call the new cases that are being recorded, not even the cumulative number, because as I'm sure we've all now come to understand, the cumulative number, even if you have one extra tomorrow, it will go up. But in terms of the new cases, some attention has been paid to the sources of the new cases, where the new cases are coming from. And it is that which gave us the indication that a significant number of the new cases are concentrated in workplaces or in specific environments. These are spikes in specific environments. And that is why somewhere last week you saw us put out the guidelines for protection in the workplace. And we continue to make the point that people in workplaces or managers of workplaces must take a keen interest in ensuring that extra protection is provided there, because simple things like doorknobs, clocking systems, stair rails, door handles are proving to be a major transmission point. So on that front as well, we have stepped up the guidelines and the education that is required to ensure that operators of these workplaces are aware and help to protect their people.
How important did government and the COVID team think the relationship should be, or the coordination should be, between the teachers or the management of the schools and the parents, knowing that in public schools, unlike private schools, the PTAs are not too strong and the communication always has a vacuum?
Well, let me even add another challenge to that. Because of COVID-19, you have several places where, even where the PTAs are strong, there are no PTA meetings that are taking place to ensure that there's some direct interaction. But you would have to start at some point. You have to start off by, first of all, allowing the kids to come back to school, getting, in particular, the teachers, the non-teaching staff, and the school authorities aligned on what they need to do. Ensure that generally, parents are aware of their role in the scheme of things and also live up to their end of the bargain. And then as you move on, encourage interaction between parents and the schools using the kind of technology that they can afford, so that whatever feedback or guidance must be given to the schools or must be given to parents is able to then take place at the local level.
There's a considerable aspect of when the students are supposed to return in relation to when we're expecting to have the full phase in force in terms of the reopening for all pupils, and then the student at the top level too. What are the timelines we're looking at, sir?
What we have said so far, and the president has been quite clear, is that every step we take must be informed by learning from the global perspectives, learning even from the local context. And so we did not think it was prudent ab initio to open up all the schools or even set ourselves a date for opening up all the schools for every cohort to be in it. What we saw was necessary to complete was a final year examination calendar, which some of the students have not had the opportunity to finish because school activity was suspended. And so the primary focus has been to get these kids in school, final year students in school, to complete their examination. For the gold track students, it is because they had not completed their tuition or their instruction. So for them to also go and complete. Now, what we are going to do is to use this period, we are less than a month in, to use this period to understudy and understand the dynamics on campus while observing social distancing and all the other things that we are speaking about. And then use that understanding to inform the next step of whether or not it is indeed possible to allow more kids into school after these ones are done with their exams, or to phase it. It is a learning from this point that will inform what we do at the next step. So we don't have fixed timelines now. We are in the first about 3 weeks of this first phase, during which period we can learn and understand the dynamics and then use that to inform the next set of decisions.
And I don't know whether some of these perhaps international experiences also is going to inform or has informed this. For example, in early May, I'm taking this from the independent newspaper in the UK, at least there were fears when they did the reopening of schools in France. 70 cases were reported. We've had cases in Israel as well, South Africa, South Korea. And how are some of these, based on the observation, informing our learning experience?
Yeah, because you could have maybe a teacher or a non-teaching staff or a student who may have picked it up at home and who forms part of this very small cohort coming into the school environment. And there's a risk that that person may pass it on. And that is why you also have to put in place strong screening mechanisms as people come to school on a daily basis. And that's why we've invested in thermometer guns, etc., to ensure that the basic signs and symptoms are being screened, so that if you pick up any such thing, you can quickly isolate and ensure a proper test is done and that person is given the necessary supportive treatment. The other thing also is that the world has come to an understanding that the wearing of the face mask is a major cut in the transmission rate, because it ensures that persons who are positive and who can transmit do not send out droplets, which other people can pick mostly with their hands, and then as they touch their mouth or their nose or their eyes, pass it on to themselves. That is why in Ghana, for example, the state is ensuring that we provide these face masks to everybody. In total, about 10 million people in total about 10 million masks or 10 million masks, which we believe can protect the about 3 million plus people who are going back into the various learning institutions to complete and write their examination. And so we are drawing from some of these international lessons and trying to contextualize them locally in putting up our own defense layers. Okay.
I did notice that the president in his previous addresses did indicate, I believe in the 12th address, I'm very sure of it, that for senior high school students who were shifting away from education, were entering the electoral register matters, who are the age of 18, they should be given the opportunity, etc., to go and register. Have we any indication that the pupils at the basic level also have been coerced into this as well?
Well, at basic level, people are at most supposed to be about 15 years. So that will be underage, and they, it's my understanding, will not be in a position to ordinarily register at the basic level. But at the senior high school level, where the final year students are about 18 years, a lot of parents ask the question, so what happens to our kids? Why don't I let them stay at home and register before they go home? And I think the view is that these young ones who are turning 18 should be given an opportunity to register on campuses, and then subsequently they can transfer their votes to wherever they'll be casting their vote. Because you also don't want a scenario where they are leaving campuses and going home with a view to go and register and come back, which increases the risk levels. And so I think the idea is to give them the opportunity to register on campus, and then when it is due for transfer of votes, they can then transfer their votes into their various constituencies.
Now, you have heard the statement by Katie Hammond, the Member of Parliament. What's the position of government on his statement?
I think, first of all, one of the unfortunate things that has happened is a report by some media networks. I did indeed see one on my Joy Online that says that government has double standards on what is happening across our borders. And the report sought to juxtapose what the Honorable Katie Hammond, Member of Parliament for Adansia Sokwa, who is not a member of government, who is not a spokesperson of government, to juxtapose what he has said with what the government officials who are doing this exercise have actually said. Indeed, as I paid attention to the Honorable Katie Hammond's video clip, the full 4-minute video clip, and I want to encourage you to play the full 4-minute video clip to your audiences, not the edited version. If I heard him well, he says that he is guessing that this must be the reason for the deployment. And then he goes ahead to explain what his guess is. I think you should play it, the full thing to your audiences for them to see if indeed he said that, I guess this is the rationale. First of all, this is not a member of government. He's not the one conducting the exercise. He's questioned by journalists, and then he says he guesses that this is what is happening. And one of the first unfortunate things is this, may I say, narrative around it that the Honorable Katie Hammond has said that Voltarians are not Ghanaians. I mean, Roland, I know you, I know your network. It will be shocking if indeed that is what we all want to play back and say he has said, because what I have listened to doesn't amount to what he has said. He has expressed his personal view about why he guesses the exercise is ongoing. And I think, first of all, in the reportage, we have to be fair to him and put him in his full context. But why is this exercise taking place? When did this exercise start? Where else is this exercise starting? I think that as we are putting out these stories, all of us have a responsibility to tell the full story. As far back as March, since we started closing our borders, the government has been deploying joint security troops in various parts of the country to ensure that the borders are not compromised. You have been privy to the leaders of these security teams telling us how many people they have arrested trying to cross the border here, how many people have crossed through illegal routes and have ended up testing positive for COVID-19. It's an extensively known matter. All of a sudden, the conversation is now getting to a point where everybody is beginning to pretend that we are all not aware of this joint security operation that has gone on from about March till now, other operations like Operation Conquer Fist, etc., and are all now beginning to fall for this, may I say, narrative that has been put out that the Honorable K.T. Hammond says that Voltarians are not Ghanaians, and that will be a justification for the deployment of troops in, I think, K2 South also specifically. I think what we need to do is to broaden the conversation. Let's ask ourselves, when did the deployment start? Where have the deployments been taking place? If I've seen a report by Rafiq Salam, I think from WA and some others from other parts of the country, and let's tell the full story so that we don't create a storm in a teacup.
I have had interactions with some members of the Immigration Service and indeed some security personnel who had their colleagues deployed in some of these centers. And they say that, of course, there had been the beefing up of the personnel at the border posts. But in relation to the Aflao and the entry point in the Volta region, these have increased over the last couple of weeks. Is that coincidental, or is it just part of the routine?
So today, for example, the minister responsible for defense will be joining us at a minister's press briefing, I think later this morning, and we'll have an opportunity to, for example, answer all of these questions. But you see, the question you have asked, therefore, is a very fair question. If we start off on that conversation that, yes, it is true that deployments have been going on across the country since March, is there a reason for which maybe on X or Y or Z date, these persons have been deployed at a location? The authority responsible for conducting the exercise then has the duty to provide that answer. And if that answer is not satisfactory, we'll all be the last persons to follow an unsatisfactory answer. But not to do that and to now frame the conversation that the Honorable K.T. Hammond says that Voltarians are not Ghanaians is a totally different, distorted conversation from the real one that I'm very happy you are pushing this for. You do notice, for example, that when we started our conversation, we didn't start off by saying, Minister, can you confirm whether indeed it is true that in the last 1 week, troops have been deployed in this particular location? And what is the rationale? That is a fair way to start this conversation. And if we do that, I'm sure that as the Minister of Defense will speak later this morning and explain, the rationalization will be there out and clear. But what I'm suggesting we do not do is to distort this conversation and now say that the Member of Parliament for Dansia Sokwa, who is not a member of government, who does not speak for government, having said in the corridors of Parliament that he guesses that this must be the rationalization, is now the mainstream conversation we are going to have. And I think that we should reject that and focus on that. And to answer your question specifically, the Honorable Dominic Niti will be speaking later today as to when it started and the rationalization behind it. You've seen also some persons put out photos and videos, which are old photos and videos, claiming that people in the certain parts of the country are being brutalized by military persons, etc. And thankfully, it is beginning to come out that some of these videos of the police and the military are old infractions that have been online for a while now. And I think that what we all need to do, I've seen you guys are doing a project on fake news. What we all need to do is to say, this is not the conversation. This rather is a conversation, and can we focus on it and get the answers there? And the Honorable Dominic Niti will help us with those answers later today.
Okay, so the beefing up of the security personnel is routine, not coincidental with a registration that is approaching tomorrow.
You are aware that I have not offered an answer. I have said that the Honorable Dominic Niti will be providing the answers later this morning at the Minister's press briefing. And I've encouraged that that is what we focus our attention on. Who is the one doing the exercise? When did he start the exercise? Why is he doing this exercise? That is what we should focus on, and not a distorted conversation of The Honorable Kitty Hammond has said that Voltarians are not Ghanaians. I do understand that he's even issued a statement explaining that he has never said that and encouraging the media and everybody else to play the full 4-minute exchange that he had with the journalist, where he starts off by saying that he guesses that if what they are telling him is true, then he guesses that that would be the rationalization. We can't make that the main argument here. So let's have Dominic Nittiwo behind the podium explain when it started, why it started, the extent of the exercise, and what is sought to be achieved from it.
Comments, and I know that you're not a member of the Electoral Commission, but because you're the Minister for Information, sometimes when we're speaking with you, some of these comments will come up. So this one says, one cannot, I understand for this particular registration exercise, one cannot transfer his or her vote until after a certain period. Can the Honorable Minister explain or clarify this for us? This is in response to the registration of some senior high school students.
So, Roland, thanks for the caveat you put there. I do not speak for the Electoral Commission. It will be good to have them say it themselves at some point in time, because sometimes the messenger can be confused with the message. But Roland, the other thing is that, is it true that in the past, during a registration exercise, you can transfer your vote? I'm not sure that has ever happened in times past. The registration takes place separately, and then prior to the election, persons who want to transfer their votes have an opportunity to transfer. We have a new CI 126. It will be good to speak to the Electoral Commission for them to explain how CI 126 and the laws that govern our next election answer this question of when you can transfer your votes. But as has always been the case, I think the understanding is that first you register, and then after the registration exercise, if you want to transfer your vote, you have an opportunity to transfer your vote somewhere.
Well, moving on, we do know the president will be addressing the nation today. What time is he doing that? Exactly, what time?
The Office of the President will communicate the time for his address to us. The head of state has an obligation at this time that a registration exercise is coming up to encourage Ghanaians to take up their civic duty. And that is what His Excellency the President will be doing later tonight. His office would announce the specific time for that address. But yes, I think we can look forward to that address from the head of state.
Well, as we wind up this conversation, there have been related concerns, starting from the MPP primaries, that we don't seem to be implementing on full-face level the restrictions act that we have, and then the enforcement of the face mask protocols. And there have been a number of instances from the primaries, and then over the period also, we had just over the weekend the acclamation for the president to be the presidential candidate for the party, the MPP, in the next election. What would you say to that?
So just to put that in context, I am not aware of anybody who has complained of a breach of the restrictions during the acclamation of the president on Saturday. I'm not aware of that. The one I'm aware of are widespread complaints that during the NPP primaries, while it is true that at the point of voting, the preventive and distancing protocols were observed, when the spontaneous jubilations started in some constituencies, some of the voters and delegates and supporters and well-wishers did not observe that. And I think His Excellency the President has had cause to express regret about it and continue, as he does with the general admonitions, to admonish that we should do our very best to comply with it. And where the security agencies have reason to move in to enforce, they should do so to enforce. I have nothing more useful to add to the President's comments.
Well, I have to thank you, the Minister for Information, Oppong Nkrumah, Member of Parliament for Francois Yorubi. I'm told that you've been vigorously campaigning after your acclamation. It's been going well.
Well, we haven't started a full campaign. We've been inspecting some projects, and yes, you're right. Thanks to God, it's been going well. We'll do our best on that front.
And I'm told that some of your opponents had not been happy that you'd been fully acclaimed. You went unopposed. So how are you dealing with that as part of the president meeting the candidates who lost and trying to merge the differences for the NPP to have one unified agenda for 2020?
Your information would not be correct, because I did not have any opponents right from the beginning. I was a sole candidate, the only candidate even to have picked forms. So there was no conversation about opponents and whether disqualification and somebody being unhappy about it. In the Oppong Nkrumah constituency, thanks to God, we have a very, very, very united front. We're singing from the same hymn sheet. We acknowledge that we've been behind for many decades, and we have an opportunity to, with a united front, speed up the development and progress of our constituency. And so we don't have divided fronts with various opponents. No, I have not had any opponents. Indeed, we all rather work together in pushing the common agenda. But on the broader front, yes, the president has met with the 42 sitting members of parliament who were not successful, and has encouraged them not to abandon ship, but to work vigorously. I was very, very pleased to see a good number of them in parliament, on the floor of parliament as chairpersons of committees, pushing their committees' work, despite the fact that they have lost their primaries. And it is with a united front only that we can ensure that the same resounding victory that we achieved in 2016, we will be able to achieve it. Because, as for example, former President Kufuor has said, if Ghana is going to sustainably be transformed, we will need the MPP administration in power for a long time to complete the transformational agenda. And in all humility, we will do our best and continue to ask for the mandate of the people so to do.
Oppong Nkrumah, you're in a good mood today. Thank you for the interaction.
Thank you, Roland.
And Oppong Nkrumah is the Member of Parliament for Ofuanse Ayerebi, Minister for Information, and helping us do great discussions. And he's promised that anytime we call on him, he's free. He will continuously, before the election comes off, that's in December, he will continuously be interacting with us right here on the AM show. It's been a great time, getting some great education, but also getting some clarifications to some of the concerns that have been raised, not only in relation to the pupils returning to the classrooms, those in third years, but also the conversation about the massing up of personnel, whether or not, within the precincts of the K2 South area, the Volta region, and the borders we have across our country. Well, we have to take a break, but when we return, we'll bring you up to speed with our latest online documentary. It's titled Psycho, The Observers Are Missing. We'll bring you that next. Stay with us.